Test. All right, that seems to work. Share screen. Zoom has been used by hundreds of millions of people. I can't be the only one that can't stand the having to hide this stuff every time. I just can't be. All right. Okay, so assignment 2, on the bottom of Laulima, there's this PowerPoint, right? And I kind of went through it in class. This page sequence is huge, though. Okay, so this is kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, what I did different, and by the way, this deployment right here at application 1, you should just do it. When you get 10 minutes of your life, assuming you've already installed CyberDuck because you have to do the whole load for your portfolio, right? So just follow the instructions. The video actually tells you the password. It's ITM 352 student. The password is bang student bang with the exclamation point being a bang, right? So you can get in there, you drop it in, and it works. But regardless whether it's for assignment 1 or assignment 2, and there is an assignment 2 folder, although the instructions don't tell you how to launch it, and right now it doesn't launch properly. You're gonna load your assignments to Port's server, and part of the issue is that the DigitalOcean deployment, what we're doing in assignment 2 is typically not done, which is why assignment 3 is going to change how we do the things we're doing in assignment 2 in terms of tracking like user status and stuff like that. But just writing to a JSON file, which is writing to any file for a serverless app, is a challenge, because what we did for when we installed our app on DigitalOcean for assignment 1, what we did was we threw it up into their cloud, right? They basically turned all the node stuff into flat files, and you can't write to them, which is no big deal, because I think having that on your resume to say you deployed serverless app to the cloud sounds really cool. And at very least, you know, might be the one thing you can remember from doing from this class. But for the rest of it, because we're writing to a file, and also because we're probably going to use some SMTP thing on his server for assignment 3, we're just going to use his folder. And honestly, I would have done that if it was up and running earlier, but it wasn't. So that's why I did the serverless deploy, because I wanted to make sure we didn't fall too far behind. Anyway, we're going to deploy assignment 2 regardless. I went through this stuff. Take a look at it. That's great. How to proceed. And here's kind of the key things. This is what I'm going to start with. Has everyone done Lab 14? It's going to make more sense to you if you do Lab 14. But Lab 14 is very generic, and it doesn't exactly plug and play into assignment 2, which is kind of why I'm going to get you to that point, at least how to transfer stuff over. This FS module, so this is a file system module in Node.js. Basically, all you're going to do with that file system is you're going to write to your user data JSON, which is going to be new, and your products JSON. And as you get past this minimalist program that I'm going to build today with you, you're going to need to write other stuff to the user data JSON file just to keep track of it. And so that's this FS write file sync. There's synchronous and asynchronous writing. It doesn't really matter. But this code right here is going to be used. And we're going to use some of that stuff and the user data JSON. So we're going to start out with at least look over Lab 14. I have a video that walks through everything in Lab 14. So you should get it done if you haven't. But here's the thing that's a little bit different that I added over the Thanksgiving weekend to try to help y'all figure this out is you see let me get my little laser pointer. So you see this is kind of where we are, products display. We're going to add the login page. We're going to go to invoice. So again, this PowerPoint is on the bottom of the instructions. I uploaded it, and you can kind of see, what do I need to do to get this to work? Okay, so my products display, my products HTML and JavaScript are mostly unchanged. I'm going to go over kind of like what needs to change at a minimum. And that is really just the ability to add display personalization. And it's real simple for that. You're just going to add like a div that doesn't have anything with an ID that when you read something, and we'll talk through it, it can say welcome back after you've already logged in or registered and you go to the product page. It's only going to matter on the products display if you got to the invoice and hit continue shopping and it pops you back here. At that point, you should have personalization. Where else on the invoice, whether you're logging in or you're registering, your invoice should have welcome Tay or thanks Tay or something like that. Okay. So not a whole lot's going to change. I'm going to walk through that. Now, for the server JS and the products JSON, there are some things that are going to change. So we are not relying on server memory anymore for the quantity sold and the quantity available. We're going to actually write it to the JSON file. So we're going to have to update our products file, talk about that. And then, and this is minor changes from where you were on assignment 1. We're going to change the redirect to login instead of the invoice. Makes sense, right? So previously we went straight from products to the invoice page. Now we're going to have a redirect. We're just going to change it to login HTML. But like we did with products to the invoice page where we had to send the quantities, we now have to send that to login page. Then a login page, which doesn't care at all about the quantities. I'm like, I don't care about quantities. I just want you to log in. Has to be able to like adjudicate the login and then send it on to the invoice with those quantities so that you can do an invoice. Does that make sense? So we're going to work through path 1 here, product display, login to invoice page with the core functionality, but I'm not going to do a lot of validation stuff other than when you go to login, is the login correct? The registration page has a bunch of validation you have to do for like name, email address, and matching. I'm only going to do the simplest one, but I guarantee you the validation stuff that's required in the registration page isn't hard. The only hard part of that is if you're using regex, regular expressions. Maybe Port understands it. If he does, he's like one of 100 people who says they do that actually does. I rely on like, prior to Chet, I was relying on like there are regular expression generators out there, and then you test it to make sure it works. I like to get regex, throw it into Chet, and see if Chet can even explain it to me. But it's what I'm saying is the validation required for that stuff isn't super hard. There's, however, some differences that are requirements in this document or in the assignment that are just outside of the scope of just this normal flow in terms of tracking the number of users. And when you get to assignment 3, you have to like track it even more. Go ahead.
So from product display, it'll automatically take it to the login page, that's the invoice page. But let's say we go back to the products page after login. We have to make it so that once we put purchase, now it goes automatically to the invoice page.
Yeah. Okay, so here's, and I'll show you kind of, I almost see where you're going, or you have a great question. I didn't know, you didn't even know you asked. Okay, so right now we got the products display and this is assignment 1, go straight to invoice, right? Here, we're going to hit the purchase button that would normally get us to the invoice. Instead, we're going to go to login. We're going to do our login, and that's going to then send us to invoice, right? What you want to have when you get to the invoice page is you're not going to have a menu bar to send you back to products. You have 2 buttons. One is continue shopping, which will send you back to the products display, or purchase, which logs you out. And what that means is different than what you think it means. And it completes the purchase. Okay. And then after that's done, it'll send you back to products page, but it's just you like you first went there. Or you could also go back to the index. It doesn't matter to me. But when you're done with the invoice and you hit purchase, it's going to theoretically execute the purchase. And it's going to send you the way I have it, it sends me back to product page, but it's blank because you haven't logged in yet. So it's like you're logged out, even though it's not what you think in terms of log out, like when you go to Amazon, but it's a simile of it. Okay. Simplified version. So I'm going to go through this products flow to invoice. And I have this broken out in each part, login HTML, login JS. the process login. And then you see how the bubble moves from product display to login page. Here are the things we have to worry about on the login page. And then on the invoice page, what we're going to need. So we're going to need client-side stuff and we're going to need server-side stuff for all of these, right? So we're going to walk through that. And then we go from this path. Does this make sense where the little red arrow goes? Right? So I'm going login page. You don't have a login, you will click register, and then you'll go to the registration page. You'll go through the registration page, get to the invoice, and then the invoice stuff is exactly the same from the previous path. So that's kind of what I'm going to walk through. When you're done, there's going to be plenty left over for you to do, but at least you'll have a shell to build on. And most importantly, you need to understand how you got there, because that will make all the rest easier to do. So I'm not going to go through encrypting the password, but that's super simple. You're going to get a function. There's great examples of functions. You can choose the right one for you. And you're going to encrypt the password. So what you actually store in the JSON file isn't going to be the clear text password, it'll be encrypted one, right? Now you're still just sending in the regular clear text password in the form. That's fine. Okay. All the validation functions for registration you're going to have to do. Now, way I have it right now, and this is kind of key for how you solve a lot of the tracking the users logged in, is right now the way I have it. Let's say you click the continue shopping button, and I'll walk through the app real quick in a second. It brings you back to, so you continue shopping, go to products page, it's sticky. It says, welcome Tay, here's how many items you currently had already chosen. Then you hit purchase again, and it sends you back to the login, because that's the current way I have it programmed. So you can imagine a simple if statement that's like, if there was some value that you had added that said that this person was logged in, then you can go ahead and just go straight to the products page. Does that make sense? So this is an important concept, because it, like, whatever you choose to do here, that variable, how you store it and what you call it, will make the rest of it kind of pull together in terms of how you're tracking the status of individuals that are logged in at the same time. So that answering that third bullet gets you to the fourth bullet, and then you have to look through the other assignment 2 requirements on the Lima, make sure they're met, and of course, it still has to function. Okay, so I'm going to basically pull up this stuff, and I'm going to walk through each slide in my, what do you call that again, VS Code. Some of the stuff I'm going to type out, some of it is just, I'm going to show you some HTML. I'm like, hey, I added 2 buttons, notice these things. I am confident that you can figure out how to do a couple of buttons worth of stuff. So I'm going to type out a lot of the JavaScript commands, but I'm not going to focus a lot on doing the HTML, but I will talk about it. Is that cool? Good, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Outstanding. Okay, so we're going to go to how you proceed, and we're going to start on this. This is slide 9, okay? Not what I intended to do. I hate you so much. Zoom. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between the PowerPoint and my code as I go through these different steps. Isn't that pretty cool? Look at that. Look at that animation on click. Isn't that great? All right. So anyway, I'm going to start on slide 9. So this is kind of the precursor. And I show you what I did is I created a new GitHub repo. And what I did in my GitHub repo was I basically copied over assignment 1 and I threw it into this new repo. I recommend you do the same for one reason. If you break something, and you will likely break something, you still have a functioning assignment 1 repo to go back and copy code from, okay? Always a good idea. Plus, I'm going to start changing a bunch of things. Now, it really is the same. So I'm starting off with my A1, but I will admit, I added a few files in here that I'm going to walk through. So you knew we needed a login page, right? You knew we needed a register page, right? You know we need simple JavaScript files to go with those 2. So I kind of have the login page, login JS, and the register page and the register JS. I have those when I walk through them when we go through the slide. So basically, moral of the story here is make sure that you are starting with a repo that's from a known good set of code. Okay. And by the way, this isn't something that I practiced going through, like this is, a routine that I have. So it's not going to be quite as like fluent as, a presentation that I have prepared in a video that I have edited. This is going to be real life. I'm going to mess some things up and we'll get it done. Okay. So going back to that slide 9, says here, we're going to create a user data JSON file. Okay. So I have created a user data JSON file. If you did lab 14, this is not new to you, right? Because we had a user data JSON file. So can you just describe what is this? Yeah, but what is between those two curly braces, what kind of variable is that? Strings are inside. What kind is it? So is it an integer? Is it a floating point number? Starts with O. It's an object, right? And it's got other objects inside of it. So it's an array, it's an object. It's an object variable with an array of objects inside of it. You got object 1, object 2, object 3, that kind of stuff, right? And we're just primary, you're going to do an email address, and then you're going to have a name and a password. Now, this looks like an interesting place to put things if you wanted to add stuff later, either for assignment 2 or assignment 3. If you wanted to add some kind of personalization or tracking, this might be a good place to do it, right? Now, before we got to assignment 2, we were just using a JSON file products. We weren't changing anything, right? We were changing everything in server memory. Now, because we have that file system node module, now we can actually write and change things. So when we go to register, this thing's going to grow because we're going to use file system write and you're going to register people in, and you'll see that. So right now, very simple user data JSON. You put whatever you want in here. In terms of something, but make sure you put the ITM 352. I put at uh.edu. I probably should have put Hawaii. I didn't want to type out Hawaii over and over again for myself. That's why I put UH. So there you go. We got a user data JSON. Okay. Then we're going to do this file system module stuff from lab 14. Okay. So I am going to go to server.js. So what I did on my server.js from from assignment 1 to now was I took everything in assignment 1 and I just put it up at the top that I wasn't going to change. Okay. So, and I just collapsed these so you can see them real quick, but this actually helps me quite a bit in terms of like knowing where I'm changing my code. Above this line, you probably don't need to change it. Below this line is where I changed it, okay? So, like line 2, dang this cursor. There's a way to change it where it doesn't pop up like that, but I keep forgetting to do it. Okay, so I'm loading the Express app, so we have a web server. I'm using query strings so that we can use query strings from the post, be able to pull stuff out of it, right? I'm doing a console log just to see what's happening on my server. Great. I am sending for static files. You're going to go to the public directory. So we know that. Line 10, we're listening on port 8080, which you have to for this to work on port server, right? I'm creating a products variable and it's going to the products JSON file. So that gives us our products.js, right? Right here. So this is our products.js. And then we're doing our URL encoding so that we can actually throw the URL out and bring it back and get some value out of it, okay? And then I have my validate quantity function. This is the one that I like. I like switch statements for this kind of thing, but you don't have to use them. Matter of fact, your code should be your own. But this stuff right here up to line 17, that just needs to be in your code. There's no originality required, okay? And then I moved my function validate quantity because that's not changing. I'm still going to use the function validate quantity like I did in my products page. And then I put a thing in here, lines 2 through 43 do not change from assignment 1. So assignment 2 add from here, okay? I have a comment. All right. Now, I'm going to do some stuff that's all from the instructions for assignment 2, as well as from lab 14. So I'm just going to go ahead and type the code in, although it is painful. I'm going to do const fs. Hey, someone look up, how do I turn off that? You know, the IntelliSense throw stuff out there. Fire. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing the stuff from lab 14 where I'm requiring the file system module and node to run so that we can write to the JSON file later. And then I'm going to set a file name equal to user data.json. This is all from lab 14, so nothing surprising. User data.json, there you go. And then there's a little piece in 14 talking about, like in lab 14, it says, hey, give me the file size, stats, and all that other stuff. I don't care about that. What we do want to have in there is make sure that the file exists. So we're going to have a little if statement in here. Now, before I go any further, when it comes to scoping, is this a local or global variables in this server.js? Global because it's at the top level of this program. Now, inside validate quantity, we have the errors array. Is that local or is that global? Local to where? Just to that function. And that's important because we're going to have to do some things where we're going to decide on what's global and what's local moving forward. Okay. So again, all I've done here is everything above line 43 is where your server.js was before. And now I'm just throwing in the stuff to get the file system module to work. And I'm going to look for whether the file exists. So here we go. If file system exists, sync, file name. Then I'm going to let data equal fs read file sync and whoa. Yeah, that's it. File name. Okay, so all I'm doing here is again from lab 14. I'm verifying that the file name exists, user data JSON exists. And if it does, we're going to let the data equal the file system sync. So how's that going to work? Is that going to work for us? Is that variable local or is that variable global? Well, how about the data one right here? It's local to what? To the if statement. Could that be a problem? If we want to access this data, so we're going to have to address that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come up above here and we're going to go let user, this is what I'm calling it. You call it whatever you want. So I'm creating a variable called user data. And it's going to read It's going to be read from the file name here, okay? And so in my if, I'm going to go user data, JSON dot parse data. Again, this is all straight from Lab 14. So why did I add? I'm going to have an else here in a second. But you can see there on line 51. So I've already got this let user data, put a comment in there. Basically, you're creating a global variable to store your user data that's coming from user data JSON. Now I'm verifying my file exists. If it is, I create this dummy variable basically called data, which reads the file. And then my user data does the JSON parsing of that data so that it can be used in JavaScript, right? Because remember, we went through this earlier in the semester. JSON is JSON, JavaScript is JavaScript. That's why we have the whole conversion of products.json into products.js, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. And then I throw a console log user data. Why did I throw that console log user data in there? Yeah, make sure things are working in my server output, things that we expect them to. And when you're doing troubleshooting, especially, you know, you're building out a bunch of new routes in server.js, adding console logs when you're trying to troubleshoot are tremendously helpful. And then when you're done with them, you can just comment them out or get rid of them. Else, what am I going to do? I'm going to console log to do, and actually, you know what? I'm going to backtick it. Remember what the backtick does, right? Oh, I forgot my. See, I've got my syntax all messed up here. Okay, there you go. That looks right. It looks more right. How about that? Okay. Okay, so what do I do? If a file exists, I'm doing user data JSON parse, and because I declared it outside of this if statement, it's now global. So the data is going to be available to all the functions and all the routes that follow. That's kind of the key part. That's why I made it a global variable. I'm letting the user data be global in this so that all the subsequent routes and functions that need to use user data can use it. We good? Good. Excellent. Now, if the file doesn't exist, I'm going to do something real simple. I'm going to create a blank user empty object, or empty object for user data. So in other words, hey, I want this program to work whether my JSON data is there or not. What I'm just doing here is I'm just creating an empty array. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to log in if my array is empty, and we're not going to have to worry about that because we have our user data JSON. But you'll see that if for some reason you copy, rename the file, delete it, you'll see that there's an error. Okay. Okay. So go ahead and save that code. And really nothing's changed yet. We'll go back to our slide. We added the FS module code, the parts that we needed. I didn't use all of this stuff from Lab 14 because I didn't need any of that stuff. So we're pretty much done with, I'll call it step 0. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Hang on a second. Yeah, hang on one second. I'll show you where we are. Yes, ma'am. Create another repo because you do not, well, you can either do one of two things. You can create an entirely new repo, what I recommend you do, or you can create a new folder, but you copy all the code from assignment one into it, because you're going to start modifying products HTML and JS and your server JS. And if you goon things up and you need to go back to zero, you'll be very sad. So that's why I recommend just creating a new one. Okay. Good question. Hang on one second. Oh, I didn't create a file name at all, did I? Oh, I did. I got file name equals, but I didn't do dir name. Well, let me go fix that. Good catch. Right now, it should be 2 like we had here in the PowerPoint. 2 underscores dir name plus. Got it. Good catch. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, cool. So we're done with step 0, which is slide 9. We're gonna move on to slide 10. So again, in slide 10, we're gonna make some minor modifications to product HTML. The server and the product JSON, we have to make some changes to. So we're gonna add a quantity sold of 0 to the JSON. That's how we're starting. And then we're gonna write it as we sell using our FS file write command. We're gonna remove code from server.js related to that quantity sold, because what we did in assignment 1 was we ran a loop that just added it to the thing. Now we're just gonna go ahead and throw it in there because we want to write to it. There's honestly, we should have done that previously, but whatever, we followed the instructions. And then we're gonna move update of quantity sold to the purchase logout, and I'll show you exactly where that is. And then we're gonna make some changes to app.post. So here's what your revised JSON for your products is gonna look like. You're just gonna add a quantity sold 0 to all of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and walk through these steps, but I'm not gonna keep going back and forth with PowerPoint. I'm just gonna kind of walk through what I have written down as the flow, okay? Right. Okay. So I'm gonna first go to my products JSON. And I'm gonna be lazy and then do copy paste as much as possible. So notice I put a little comma there, right? I'm gonna go ahead and Control C, and then I come over here, I'm gonna Control V, I'm gonna come over here, and I'm just gonna add quantity sold to all of my, that's not what I wanted to do. Whatever I just did, it's not what I wanted to do. Control V, there you go. Anyway, updated my products JSON to add a quantity sold, and we're gonna write to that as well as we're gonna write the quantity available. Again, assignment 1, we never wrote back to the JSON. The JSON always stayed static with a quantity available, whatever you set it. But now we're gonna be writing to it like it's treating it like a database. Okay. Get rid of that. Now, before I get to the server JS, I'm going to go back to my products.html. And literally the only thing I did differently in my products.html was I added a tiny little section for personalization in the header. Oscar's Aloha Styles. This was the header before, and then I added an H5 element from what I'm calling a hello message. So this hello message is going to come out in red. It's going to highlight, and this is only going to be filled in. And I'm going to update my JavaScript to see this if I get redirected from the products page from the continue purchase. That's why understanding the flow and coming up with your plan is so important. If you're just writing it one page at a time, you're going to constantly keep going back and updating things, which is fine, but knowing where you're getting, it's a pretty easy fix to make. Should I show you how this works? Just run through the program real quick. Okay. Probably should have done this earlier. Ah. Uh, User data JSON doesn't exist. My ass, it doesn't exist. Oh, I messed up in my server syntax for that one file. What remember what we just added? You go back to my server JS. See if that works. There you go. Do you all see what the error was and how I fixed it? So this is why we use console log. That was not planned. Of course, there we go. So what I did was I ran my server JS and I got a note saying, hey, A2min, which is what I named this directory, user data.json doesn't exist, but DampString does exist right here, but there's no slash that I direct to the file. So I went ahead and added the / to get to the file, and then bam, it printed out the contents of my products JSON. That's an unintentional show of how using console log helps. Okay. So now we have that. I'm going to go open up a browser. Go to my local host. Okay. So y'all remember how cute Oscar is. He's still cute. Okay. And then I'm going to go to products. And right now you don't see anything, right? Because I'm not being redirected. However, the HTML is still there. My validation still works. But now if I click purchase, it goes and then my program's over, right? So we're going to add a couple of buttons down here, and also we're going to put the login in between. That code I just put into products, it's there in the HTML. Where is it? But because I did no redirect back with a hello message, it's not populating the screen. So that's the whole point. We know we're going to need it, so that's why we did it. Okay. Otherwise, this is just the program it's running. So I'm going to run through a bunch of code and build some code out. But until I get the login HTML built to go to the invoice, it really doesn't help me to keep showing each individual part until we get there. So once we get that flow going from products to invoice, it's not that useful. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and exit the server. Exit out of there. Okay. So going back to products HTML, all I did was add that header up there. And this is super simple. We've done this tons of times, right? I mean, actually the header was there. I literally just added this line right here where it's going to be a header 5, and I wanted it to be red, and that's going to have some kind of hello message. Now, let's talk about our products JS. Or products display JS. Okay, so what I did was previously in my code, I had the windows on the bottom. It doesn't really matter in this particular case because once it loads, it's going to do a windows on load. But let's talk about what we have at the top. What does this thing do for us? We've used it a lot. What does it do? So it reads the URL, right? And then it basically allows you to search through the different parameters inside the URL. So after we hit the purchase button, remember we had the quantity 0, 1, 2, 3, all that other fun stuff. That URL, that stuff there gets read using this params. Okay. Now I have a Windows onload function. This previously existed in the code, and it was like, hey, and this is again from assignment 1 on our products page. If we click the purchase button, it went to the server to validate. Server validated. If there were errors, it sent a URL back saying, here's your error. And then it said, hey, if params has error, it's going to go to the document element where it says error message, and it's going to go ahead and put the errors in there, okay? And it's basically going to run through and put the errors in at each point and invalidate the quantity and display error. So this part right here, I didn't change anything from when I did it for A1. Basically just says, hey, if I have an error, as in no quantities, it's going to post it. Otherwise, if I have an input error, so I added 1.5, I tried to buy 1.5 of a shirt. I wanted to be negative 1.5 shirts. All those things I didn't validate quantity will come back as an input error as opposed to an error, which was blank. Right? And then this loop right here just does the validation message to push it out to the page. Nothing has changed there. I, however, have to add something. And this is the part where I need your help. So what we want to do is we want to push something and not an error. So it's out of the if loop here for if the parameters has an error. So I'm starting. My Windows onload, forget about the errors. That stuff's already done. I didn't change it. I want to push something to the page for personalization. Like what? After I log in, what would you like to show? The name. Where have we used name before? User data JSON, which is going to be input in the registration, right? When we add new ones. So coming to our products display, what we want to do is it would make sense for us to be having the name sent back after we click continue shopping, because the only time this products page is going to want to show personalization is after someone's already logged in or registered and then click the continue shopping button back, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a simple if statement. If params dot has name. What am I going to do? I'm going to go through. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Let's go document dot get element by ID. And the name of that ID was hello message. Dot inner HTML equals, and then we'll do a little backtick for the message. Thank you. Thank you, name. And again, I'm doing this. I didn't memorize, 500 lines of code, so I'm following through my notes here. Thank you, name. Put a little exclamation point. Oscar appreciates you. And then I am going to end it. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's my backtick. Okay. Control save real quick. I'm gonna have to come back and look at this again. Actually, you know what? Let's do it right now. Let's talk through what we need to do here. So on Windows onload, if I'm clicking continue shopping, getting sent back to the products page, I'm doing a nice little document, element by ID, whatever the hello message, I'm going to put in thank you name. Oscar appreciates you. That's what's going to pop up on top. Will the values that we entered previously be auto-populated into the form? Why? Remember, in our products.js previously, we typed it all in. If we had an error, it got sent back. Is there an error sending any of them back? No, it's continue shopping. So what we need to do is we need to repopulate those quantities in those cells from the URL that's coming back to us. Because remember, we're hitting products. Let me pull the PowerPoint real quick. So we're hitting products that has the quantity, right? Goes to the login page, still has the quantities, right? Goes to the invoice page, still has the quantities. We hit continue shopping. We have to send the quantities back here so that they can be sticky on the page. Because if we don't, if it just sends us back to product display, we're going to have zeros. Does that make sense? So let's go ahead and update our JavaScript file with a little loop here. And we'll do for I in products. There we go. QTY form. I'll explain this in a second after I get done typing. Although you've done this type of stuff already when we did our messages coming back for stickiness. Yeah, there we go. Control S, which should be good now. All right. So let's look at this again. We've done nothing to our products.js previously. If you click the error, if you had an error, we'll go to your server. Server will send it back to you and it'll send you the values with it so that it'll repopulate. So you have to fix it, right? And then you would go ahead and fix it. And eventually you get it right. So now all we've done is looking at that URL that's getting sent back to us from the continue shopping button. We're pulling the name out if it has a name. And we're saying, hey, Sal, welcome, thank you. And let's populate the form with the values. So we're looping through quantity form, quantity identifier dot value equals params dot get. And if you look over at your products.html, actually, no, it's down below. Yeah, you go quantity form, right here, rename, and your actual population of the rows are down here in your previous JavaScript. Okay, so all I did was add this part here. If you don't put this part in, here's the bottom line. You're not going to be able to get the personalization information from the URL, and you're not going to have sticky values. Okay, so this is a minor thing, but you have to start thinking about it early because you have to understand the whole flow of the program and what you want to have come back. Okay, that's that. All right. Now, at this point, all we have done was added a little bit of code to server.js to make sure that the user data file was there. And that's really it. Okay. Oh, see this part down here? Add a quantity sold variable for each product. Do we need to do that anymore? No, because why? It's in the JSON already. Thank you. Perfect. So I'm just going to go comment that out. And I could delete it, but no big deal. Okay. So now going back to the PowerPoint, we updated our products HTML and JavaScript. Now we have to get rid of the thing I just got rid of, right? Because we added it to JSON. And then move update quantity. So, okay, that's later. Now we're going to go to the app.post purchase process. And two things we basically want to do. One is we want to make sure it doesn't go to invoice directly. It goes to login. And the other thing is we're going to want to send the quantity data onto the login as opposed to the invoice page. So let's go ahead and look at that real quick. So I'm going to come in and here's my app post from a fully functioning assignment 1. right? Nothing stops at the post, the has quantity, the error object, that's all good. For in products, you're gonna let the quantity equal post, and you're gonna be using it here just to ensure that you have some quantity in there. Validate your input, that error messages, that's fine. And if you have an error message, then you'll go ahead and update your error object. Okay, great, all that's good. This paragraph right here is fine, or this if statement rather. If has quantity false, yep, we're gonna go back with the error. So this is what we did in our JavaScript. Okay. Everything's good. Else if, none of this else if changes except for right down here. We're gonna have to do some things different. We're gonna have to start thinking about how we're gonna deal with, we have a quantity and there are no errors. So that's what line 98 is. If we have quantities in there that aren't zero, and there are no errors after we did the validation loop, how are we going to deal with this quantity stuff? Okay, so first off, you see this part down here, update the quantity sold and available. Is that allowed to do right now in this product purchase? No, we have to push this. We have to push this to the complete purchase button that's going to be on our final invoice, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to comment this part out. And I'll add right there. Moves to after invoice purchase button is pushed. Okay. Now, we need to take a conceptual question here. Okay. Here's my app.post. Here's my quantity. How am I going to keep sending stuff along to the pages? Through the URL. How do we keep that so that we can keep calling it through the URL? So right now, when we hit the display purchase, right? So here's what the code currently says. Let quantity equal post. So this right here, we're basically going to post to the URL the different quantities, right? And then we come down here and we just stringify that post and it comes up here. Will those values ever change? They could if we were to go back and update them, right? But right now, this quantity variable that goes to the post, is it global or is it local? Local. If we want those quantities to be able to be pulled at different pages, what do you think we're going to need to do? Make it global. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come up at the top. This is why all those people aren't here right now are going to be so sad. We're going to create what I call, this is what I'm calling it, let temp user, okay? And this is going to be temp, temporary storage for user inputs to be passed along. See slide 10. Slide 10 is this thing right here. Okay, that's slide 10. So this gets to the thing. We're going to send product quantities to login HTML as part of the redirect. Why and how? Why? Well, login is now an intermediary page. It doesn't use the quantities, but it needs to be passed on afterwards. If we didn't create this global variable for us to save that URL and then push it on, well, we'd have to do some other things to try to get that to be able to be available to then be forwarded on from the login. Okay? And then how we're gonna read the quantities, post it into a dummy variable. So that's what the temp user is, it's a dummy variable. Dummy meaning it doesn't serve any other purpose other than I'm gonna use it just to pass stuff on. I'm not gonna do any calculations or anything on it, so it can be converted. That's what that part meant, okay? So let temp user, now I'm gonna come down here and instead of let quantity temp user, okay? So we just declare temp user up above. We don't know what it is, right? It's just a variable. We're saying save some memory, not even telling you what kind it is yet. But now it's being populated with array data. So now our temp user is an array, which we are going to use to send into the URL to go to the login page. Now, because I changed from quantity to this global variable, I'm going to have to do a couple other things, okay? So we come out of here, okay. Now, you see in this response redirect, we did QS stringify post. We could do that because we got a post message, right? And we use the query string module to just take the post and we're going to stringify that and send it on to the invoice. Are we still doing that? Where are we sending it to? And then are we sending the post? I mean, are we sending the stuff from the post? Or are we sending the stuff from the temp data we just added? The temp data. So can I just do that? First off, we're going to go over here and we're going to change where are we going to send this thing to? Well, we're going to send it to login.html. Make sense? Because that's where we have to go next. And then we have the ampersand and still going to do that. No, we're not going to do the QS stringify thing anymore. We're going to do what we used to do, which is our $, params dot toString. That's it. I'll show you why I did what I just did with the backticks. Okay. So previous code, I had parentheses, login HTML, and then I did the QS because I was calling it function. Now I'm putting the backticks. Login HTML is going to be part of my string here, right? You can't make the end. So you can't make that with whatever the value of the parameters are to your string. Problem is I don't have a params in here at all. So I haven't read the params from the URL. So I have to add a params right here. Now is this search params. So here's the question. Okay. Given what we just did, as long as we have a quantity, so I'm up here at line 100, we have a quantity and there's no errors. Everyone agree where we are on 100? What are we going to do? We're going to loop through the products. We're going to put the quantities that we're receiving from the post into a temp user. So when I come down here to say, hey, I want a new local parameters from the URL, or I'm going to create a new URL from the parameters, what input am I going to use? What's going to go inside new URL search params? What was that? Temp user. everybody understand why that is? Because what I did was, again, we took the quantities that used to be a local variable, made it a global variable so that we could do this on purpose. I want to be able to send this along in the URL and just keep daisy chaining it along until I'm done. So I'm going to put inside here temp user. Okay. Do I have to change if there's an input error at all? From our previous products.js and our app.post purchase? No. We didn't mess with anything of the original functionality other than this part right here. What we did was we updated and said, we looked at this part right here, like if okay, so this part right here is the money shot, okay? We're moving this product updating stuff to the end when we get to invoice, and then we're making this data update to a global variable called temp user, and then we're forwarding that on response redirects login HTML. Yes, ma'am.
Like she has a question mark rather than.
Oh, it's supposed to be a question mark, sorry. Oh, you're right. Good job. Yeah. Login HTML and then the params with a question mark. Thank you. We would have had an error and I would have said, why did I do that wrong? Go ahead.
Should we go back in?
No, I don't think you need to. What you need to do is look at, and that's a great question, by the way. I'm glad that your server JS isn't exactly like mine. It means you didn't exactly copy it, but you're going to get to a point where in your server JS, then you're populating the quantities and then doing the post. So you need to apply the same logic here, where you're going to have to have a global variable. Now you don't have to call it temp user, you can call it whatever, but that global variable is going to store the quantities. By the way, it's not the only thing it's going to store as we move on in this thing. So you're going to have a global temporary variable right above your process purchase, and then you're going to redirect whatever's in there to your login. Regardless of anything else you had in there, just for that part of the logic, you're going to, I have no errors, I want to redirect. Okay, how are you going to redirect? I read the quantities into this temporary global variable, and I'm redirecting those to login. All right, I'm going to move on because you don't look like you believe me, but I do have a lot more to do. Okay. I will let you decide what the easiest thing for you to do is as you move forward. Everyone's code is a snowflake. The important part here is, what is the logic? The logic is, however you have written all the other stuff in your server JS for your app post purchase, if there are, after you've validated, or you've gotten to the point where the values are good and there's no errors, you don't have to use the error object, you do however you want, okay? You're going to do a loop that populates the quantities from the post into a variable, and then you're going to put that in a params and push it out. This isn't the only way to do it. This is the way I'm doing it. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Up to this point, we don't have a login HTML page, do we? So we need to create one. So next slide here, slide 11. Notice where we go. Jessica, this is important. Watch the blue. Boom. Did you see that? That was awesome, wasn't it? All right. So now we've gone past the, what do I have to change? Product display. The product display has 3 files. Product HTML. This is what I call them. Products HTML, products display.js, and then you have your server.js. We made some changes to it, right? We're good? Now we're going on to the login page, which does not exist. I'm going to quickly show you what I did. Now, I am going to be a hypocrite and tell you, do as I say, not as I do. Okay. That is a super simple HTML file for login.html. Okay. What I did was I, the instructor, am allowed to steal the CSS and styling of my TA because we talked and she's like really good at making things pretty and I'm awful at it. So I used executive privilege to say, V, I'm just going to use yours and change it a little. She's like, fine, I can't stop you. But you can't copy hers completely, make it your own. And many of you did make it your own. But for anyone who might be watching this later, if you just copied it exactly, the prettiness and everything else of these, well, you're wrong and you lose points for that, okay? So here's what I did in the header. I basically did nothing. I copied the header from my products.js. Everything here is the same. I've got my products.js. I'm going to need that because I have quantities and stuff that I have to deal with in my JS, things like that. I literally copied the header. Make sure you have a title on there for the page. I just put Oscar's Bazaar, but you could put login, whatever you want. Okay. The body is where it matters. And I'm just going to show you what's in the body. And then I'll show you what it looks like live. Okay. So in the HTML, I've got this thing right here, like a little div class says, hey, please log in. And then I have a form, okay? Notice what's on the form. Form action, process login. So what am I going to have to do with that? I have to make a route in my server.js, right? And it's going to be a post. So it's going to be app.post process login. And then what do I have down here? I have a text box for input type text for email. And I have a name for it, as well as down here, I have name also. I want to point out that you need names for whenever you're pulling something from a post. Okay. But when you're pushing something to the DOM, make sure you have at least an ID. Okay. So just throwing that out there. So I've got an email text box. I got a password text box. There's some, I'm sorry, go over here. Got some default placeholder text. Oh, I thought I changed that. Yeah, I made mine a little snarkier, but I guess I forgot. Okay, and then I have an error message span. ID error message that can be pushed to based upon if you get an error pushed back, god dang it, from that process login. And then there's a URL, say, hey, don't have an account, go ahead and click and register. Let me show you what it looks like. Bam. That's what it looks like. Couple things though. You notice anything different from the top navigation bar thing from earlier? Yeah. You don't want someone to be able to go back home or products. You want them to do the login. Per the current specs on this program, we're forcing them to log in or register before they can move on. Like, you can still close the tab if they don't like it, but you know, there you go. You all can do this on your own, right? You can create a form that puts a text box for email and a text box for password, and then a button that says login, and then a URL that says register. So we don't need to beat that to death anymore, do we? Nope, it's dead. But I do have a script source down here for login.js, okay? So let's look at my login.js. I'm just going to show you how simple this is and compare this to what you had in your products.js. The only thing I need to do in my login.js is to see if I get an error back from my login process. So I'm doing another params up here, right? From a URL. Why would I need that? Well, look at my drawing again. Right? So I'm here at the login page. Once I hit the post, it's going to go to server.js. If server.js, whatever validation you do, comes back and says, hey, there's an error, where's it going to send you? Back to login.js, just like we did with products, right? So that's why in my login.js, I have, hey, I'm going to read in the URL, and then my window onload. If I have a login error, which means I need to make sure that there's some login error in the URL. If there's an error, what are you going to do? You're going to go document by get element ID, error message, HTML, here's the error. And then your document got element ID, the value equals email. What is that? Tell me what that is.
If you have the wrong password, goes back, then sticky.
Yeah, sticky pack, perfect. Okay, outstanding. So what this does is the Windows onload, it's going to look at the URL that you just read into parameters. If there's a login error, it's going to paste that error into your div that has the error message. And it's going to put in your email so you don't have to retype in your email address. Now, if the error is you didn't have an email in there, you're obviously not going to have to worry about that because it's going to be blank. But this will keep the stickiness part, okay? So let me go back to my server.js. In my server.js, I just fixed it so that under my app post, it's going to go to login HTML. Shall we check to see if this works? Let's check to see if it works. So terminal. Okay, so I'm listening on port 8080 and it's reading in my user data JSON. That's nice. Close out that. I'm going to go back. Oh, by the way, do yourself a favor. Now that we have this like temp user stuff going on, whenever you stop your server, you restart it, go ahead and launch yourself a new page, because if that temp user data isn't updated, it can cause it looks like null errors and all that other fun stuff. So I'm going to reload the page. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to products. I'm going to do 1, 2 of these, and then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and I hit purchase. Where should I go? Now, as you have seen with Jessica correcting my typing, doesn't work always for me the first time anywhere, whenever I do anything, because I usually have typing errors and I'm trying to do things too quick. So I have this stuff right here. Now, if I were to click login, would anything happen? Oh, something's going to happen. Cannot post process login. Why not? I didn't even just write the code yet for it, so we have to do something. All right. Does that make sense? Are you okay? You sure?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we did the login, HTML, and the JS. Move on to slide 12. We're still in login page, but now we're going to talk about our app post process login. What are we going to do? We're going to read in the request file. So there's going to be some typing, but this is going to be super similar to what we did with our process purchase. We're going to read user input from the login email. We're going to make that also go lowercase because that's per the instructions. That's super easy, 2 lowercase. And we're going to read the password. Then we're going to validate that an email and a password were entered, and if not, update the login error. This is a lot like Lab 14, right? It's just the structure of the web page is different. Then we're going to check to see if email matches an existing user. If yes, check the password. Both are good. You're going to update your user, your temp user dummy variable to include name, email address, as well as the quantities. That's why we did the temporary user, because we did temporary data go into the login, assuming they log in, now I can add to that temporary user data the name and the email address to use as we desire. And then we're gonna redirect to the invoice HTML with a valid in there. Remember what we had to do for assignment 1 was you aren't allowed to just type invoice.html, right? There has to be a valid in the string so that it says, hey, you need to go ahead and purchase. If it's a bad user or password, update the login error message and redirect back to login with params for login error and sticky email address, which is what we just did in the JavaScript file. So this is all the stuff we have to do. Shall we do it? I guess at this point, my question is this is what I plan on doing for the rest of this. Is this what you wanted, or is this useful? Is it not useful? Because if it's not useful, I would say just stop listening to me, put your headphones on, keep working on your stuff, or I can just stop altogether. Okay. I'm not trying to assume anything. I'm just saying, just so you all know, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to shrink my app.post. Okay. Should I be lazy? Should I copy code? No, I'm going to type it over and make you suffer through my bad typing. How's that sound? Excellent. So I'm just going to shrink this down. Look at how small the server.js looks when you just collapse all the code. Looks so simple. It's not. Okay, let me take a sip real quick. As I was just saying a second ago, in many ways, I am taking or have taken this course just as you've taken the course, and I had the exact same information provided to me that you had through the instructional slides and the lectures and everything else. The one difference is that I do have a couple of decades. Okay. Damn, is it almost 4 decades of programming? I am not a professional developer, but I've been programming since I was a teenager. So different languages and stuff. So at least I can understand and capture it a little better. But the moral of the story here is that I didn't get an answer key to these things. I created my own code. I talked to Chet. I looked online and I developed stuff. So if you think that this is supposed to be, you're just magically wake up and know how to code. No, that's not how it works. The only way to learn is to try, fix, try and get it to work. And then after it's done, you'll say you probably never want to do that again. Yes, ma'am. Where are you looking?
Under HTML.
This.
100.
Oh, I used this in a previous, wait for Tay to get back. This was my assignment 1 kind of like discussion of what we're doing. So this is what I use to kind of like write out my app 1. This was the pseudocode I used in the PowerPoint that was associated with it. You don't need to have this. I just added it there. We didn't spend enough time in this class doing planning and pseudocode, which is why I built that PowerPoint, which is why I did this particular thing that I then took snapshots of and put it in the PowerPoint. Okay. The big thing that you really need to do in this project, which I kind of tried to help you do, was get to understand the flow so you know how you're going to write the code and what needs to be in there. If you just go, okay, I'm going to write a login page, but you don't think about the fact that the login page has to accept stuff from the products page and then send stuff on to the invoice page. And then, oh, by the way, that then has to be sent back to the products page. You're going to create a login HTML in JavaScript, and then you're going to be like, damn, I didn't add enough stuff to it. Might as well just plan it all out, know minimum information that needs to be shared, and then build a functional program. So that's kind of where I went. Okay. So now I'm going back to my server.js, and I'm doing an app.post. This big block of text stuff is driving me crazy. I'm going to figure it out on the last day of class. on the cursor. I had it set up and then I reloaded, and then it went away. And it's not that bad. It's just I had it fixed at one point. So I'm going to do an app.post process login. It's going to be a function, and it's going to be request response, just like the other ones. And we have a block of code, okay? So this is just the route line, right? I got a red parentheses because my close parentheses is going to be all at the bottom, right? So I could technically just go ahead and do this now. There you go. Okay. Now, by the way, if you go ahead and launch your terminal, you know, it will tell you if there are major syntax errors, structural syntax errors in your code that you need to look at. In this particular case, we haven't written anything significant yet, but I will tell you that I use this all the time. If I see that go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like I had like 30 at one point because I started like chopping things out of code, and I'm really bad about keeping track of my parentheses and stuff. So it really did help me get to the point where I had the blocks of code correct. So just throwing that out there. Okay. You have 6? It's okay. You'll get there. Soon there'll be 0. Doesn't mean the code will work, but at least you'll have less errors. Okay. All right. So what am I going to do in my app post? First, I'm going to do, this is the same thing that I did in my other one. Request.body. What does that do? Reads in the stuff from the form, right? So remember, what is this reading in? Is it reading in from the products page? It's when you hit the submit button on the login, it's reading the name and the email from the post, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to do I just created some variable. Let entered. This is what I used. I like to make my variables a little more descriptive so that I don't have to remember what things mean. Okay, so what did I just do there on that line? 124. For what? So I created a local variable called entered email, which I got from the post, and the post got it from the request body after you hit the submit. And I've taken the thing that looked for email, right? And I made it to lowercase. So going back to, let me close out these things. I need to look at my login page. You see that part right there that I just highlighted on name email? You need the name in there if you're going to pull it from the post. That's why we have it in there. When do you need an ID? Typically when you're going to push something to like a span or get a change of value on the DOM, right? So when you're interacting with the DOM, you have the ID. When you're pulling the data from the form, make sure it's a name. Cool? All right. I keep saying the word cool, whatever, just trying to get some kind of vocal, verbal communication. And a lot of times I just get a look of fear from Marina most of the time. You mostly look afraid. Okay, so I got the email. What else should I get? And it's going to be post. And whatever you called it, password. Am I going to do two dot lowercase on the password? That would be a bad thing. Hopefully you understand that. Okay. Now, this is a little thing from Lab 14. I'm just going to do a simple if statement. If entered email dot length okay, help me finish this line. So in my process login, I'm reading in the request body, which is just basically the email and the password, right? I'm creating these temporary variables, these local variables called entered email and entered password. Right, from that post data. Now I'm asking a question, starting out with, hey, if my entered email dot length is 0 and what else?
That's it.
Entered password. What? Same thing? What does it mean? It means it's blank, right? So if both are blank, what are you going to want to do? What you're going to want to do is go request dot query dot, and I'm going to create something called login error. Because if you remember from the JavaScript for the login page, I was looking for something called login error, right? You can make it whatever you want, login error, however you want to call it. And you'll put in there email address and password are both required. So what value is that going to provide to me? Well, what am I eventually going to do with that? We're eventually going to send it back to the login page, but my login error, the value is going to be email address and password are both required. Okay, great. Now, assuming that it's not blank, we're going to do a, whoops, sorry. Yeah. Else if statement. What do we want to check for? So we do a little simple validation. We have an email and a password. What do we want to check for in the email?
Sure, that's email domain.
Well, that's for registration stuff. Yes, in the JSON file. So we did this in Lab 14, didn't I? Pretty sure I did. Okay. There are so many ways to do this. Here is my way to do it. User data. Entered email. And like I said, there are numerous ways to do this. So first thing is, hey, if they're blank, I'm going to set the login error to the email address and password of both required. Else, if user data entered email. What is user data again? And what is in that dummy variable? So temp user is the dummy variable that has the quantities, and now it has the email address and the name, not the password. No. We don't.
It has a password and
That's in that's under user data, okay? So what we're doing here is we're checking to see, hey, user data entered email. So this is finding, it's basically doing a Boolean without you having to put equals true, okay? So if entered email is in user data, you will get true, and then you will execute. And then if not, you'll have an else, right? So all you're doing right now is saying, hey, is it one of my two email addresses I currently have in there? Because all I have is two in the thing. And if it is, okay. So if the email address is in there, what do we want to check next? So we're doing a login, email address, and password. We've verified that sal@uh.edu is in there. What is the second thing we check? There we go. If user data. Oops, sorry. Entered email. Dot password equals. Okay. Let me save this real quick, and then you're going to help me walk through it real quick. So, hey, if they're both blank, send error, email address and password both required. Else, we're going to check to see if the email address is in the user data JSON file. Assuming it is, the answer is yes. Then we're going to check user data entered email.password. So in other words, whatever that email address that was just true in there, I'm going to get the dot password. That's the value of it. What are we going to set it equal to? Exactly. So what does this mean at this point? Okay, they're not blank. We went to this if. We have the account in there. We executed this if, saying, hey, the passwords match. So that means it's a valid login, right? So here's where we start to think about what are we going to do next. And we did talk about this actually already. We started from products. We went to login. We wanted to make sure the quantities go to login and then they get sent on, right? So we created a temp user that has those quantities. We have the same problem with login now going to the invoice, because we could just send it along to the invoice, but then the invoice has to send it back to the products page if we continue shopping. So we should probably add something to temp user. What should we add to temp user? And what do we want to be added? Well, what values do we want to add to temp user? So we'll go temp user, and we'll just go like this. We'll go email, right? And we'll set that equal to entered email, because we might need that email address later or something. And then we'll do the same thing, temp. So you notice, like, in VS Code is so amazing now. Like, I hit the wrong thing. Instead of a semicolon, I hit a parentheses. When I was learning how to program, none of that existed. I once spent 40 hours troubleshooting like 300 lines of code because of a simple semicolon to colon. That the screens back then weren't that high resolution, so that you were like, and none of the error messages said anything about a colon or unexpected. And that's why I literally can point to that one point in my life was why I didn't become a developer. I'm like, this is the stupidest effing career if I've got to spend 40 hours to find a semicolon. Now, someone did say, well, if you would have spent $200 on this professional editor, it would have found that maybe. And I'm like, I was a college student. I wasn't spending $200 on food. Okay, so I'm going to add temp user. I'm also going to add in what, password? No. Do we want the password going into the URL? How about name? How do I get the name though? From the JSON, right? So we would go user data, entered email, dot name. Okay, this is starting to make sense, I believe. in our login, go back to the top process login, we're gonna pull the data in from the post after they hit the button. We're gonna assign the email and password to some local variables for this particular route. We're gonna check to see if they're blank. If they're blank, we send back, or we create a login error, right? Then we're gonna check to see, is the email address exist, and does the password match it for our JSON file? So we probably want to do something good on this right now. Um, and I'll explain what I'm doing here in a second, but it should not be surprise to you after what we did last time. URL search params. Yeah, let me type it and I promise you I'll explain what I'm doing. You know those people that can do those like coding tutorials and they speak while they're typing and can explain it? They're aliens. I can't do that. Oops. I got it. I think I typed it all properly. Okay. So, assuming I have a password and my username are correct, per that they're inside the JSON, I'm gonna add the name and email address to my temp data, but now what do I have to do? I have to update my params, right? Why do I have to update my params? So just added stuff to temp user. First of all, that params, it's not even here anymore, right? That params thing was done in a previous file, so I mean, previous post doesn't matter. So I'm creating new params that's saying, hey, take this stuff that's in here and go ahead and put it in the URL, and I'm redirecting it to invoice. I'm adding valid, because remember, we need valid in there for the invoice to show, and then I'm going to stringify the parameters and break out of here. So this is if everything works great, okay? So what is the first else here that we're going to have? Else if, let's do this. Let's go first, entered password equals 0. Let's say they didn't put any password in whatsoever. Oops, yeah, that's right. Then you're going to do request dot query dot login error equal password cannot be blank. You could have ignored that, right? You could have just done instead password is incorrect, but we're just going to go in this particular case, password cannot be blank. Semicolon. Else, we want to just basically say request query, query dot login error equals, what is it going to equal? Yep. And we have one more thing to do. Outside of that nested if statement, we go request dot query dot login equals user does, or invalid email. Let's do that instead of user does not exist. Okay. So we are almost done with this. Write our stuff in. If everything's good, we're going to redirect to the invoice. At this point, we verified that we have a proper user, that the user's in the JSON, but we check to see if the password is blank. In that case, if it is blank, we'll just say, hey, your password's blank. Otherwise, you know it's an incorrect password because it didn't pass that. And then outside of this, you're going to say invalid email because you only check the password once your email address was validated. Everybody good? All right. Okay. Let's do this. How shall we oh, okay. Let's think about this. What are we doing next? Okay. So we did this part. Hey, if everything's good, I mean, we're going to check to see if it was blank. Okay. Check to see if this stuff is good. Right now, all we've done is redirect back to, or redirect to the invoice if everything's good. What are we going to do if everything isn't good? What do you think we should do? No, if everything's not good. Because put this way, we've gone through this if statement. The only way for you to get onto the invoice is to have validated your login email exists and the password is correct, right? So when you're done executing that, and by the way, this returns out of it, so it breaks out of the if statement altogether. What do we have to do last? Okay, so let's do that. Response dot redirect, and we're going to want to go to login.html question mark okay, but sorry, there we go. Okay, so is that going to work? Is that going to be enough? So where's params in here again? We use that params down here? Not. And we don't want to, right? Because in this params, we added this temp data, right? So what we're going to want to do is get a new params down here. And what do we want to add to the params? Maybe just the email address to make it sticky. So, well, here, I'm going to show you this and we're going to talk through it to get the right answer. So I know we don't want to send temp user, right? That's not what we wanted to send. What do we want to send? Well, I don't know if you've seen this before, but request dot query dot email. Okay. We're basically saying, hey, in your request query, put an email parameter and set it equal to the entered email. So what do we want to send in our parameters? We want to send the request.query. There are numerous ways to write that particular few lines of code. At least this part right here. Yeah. But what I've decided to do is go, hey, in the request query, go ahead and adding this email element, it's gonna set it equal to enter email. I'm gonna let my params pull that request query out. And now it'll have email, entered email, whatever the value is. I'm gonna redirect it, log in, I'm gonna update my params to that. Okay. So hit Control S, and now let's test this to see how it works. We want to pay attention to URL. Yeah, did I mess something up? Of course I do. You are like a human editor. That's fantastic. How did this not give me problems? God, this is why we can't trust anything. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you are a human syntax checker. That's phenomenal. Okay. Okie dokie. So I'm gonna server's running. We're making some progress. Go into products. 2 summer alohas. Hit purchase. Go to login page. No surprise here, right? Let's do something. Let's just go. I just hit post, right? Look what I get up in the URL. In the URL, I get login equals email plus address, password are both required, and email equals nothing. Okay. So you see the sticky part of the email in the request query that is blank because we didn't have to do anything, or it wasn't in there. Okay, so and then notice it populated that error message span, email address and password both required, which is what came out of that response redirect, which is the params, right? Everybody good so far? So let's go ahead and type in sal at sal.sal. Invalid email. Doesn't even have to check the password, right? Fine. Okay, password field cannot be blank because we added that one. But again, you probably didn't need to. I just added it in there because I'm a little crazy. I'm going to type in the letter K. Hit login. Incorrect password. And let's look up here. So incorrect password, login, incorrect password, email equals sal at uh.edu. How do they get that? That response.query.email equals whatever the email was entered, got thrown into the params along with the login error. Completely off topic. I did not search for Toucan or you. Actually, I did type in you. I was trying to go to YouTube. And then these deploy serverless app. I actually did do that because I was trying to figure out the issue on DigitalOcean. But why do I need this? This is awful. This is absolutely awful. It's Bing bastards. Anyway, sorry. Okay. So now I am gonna go ask I don't know if that's the password or not. Yes, ma'am.
So say like.
Yep.
When they click register, do you want us to take it to the login page or take it to the?
Oh no,
products?
we're going to a register page.
So like. And say they take.
No, here's what's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. It was redirected to the invoice.html, right?
Invoice.
Yeah, but it's got this weird null stuff. That's not good. Oh, I know why it's not good, because we haven't even gotten to this part yet. Okay, so we have some other things that we have to deal with. Okay, but I just wanted to hit the fact that it went to process login. We have to still update invoice HTML and the JavaScript. Okay, but it at least went to the invoice. Okay, and I have to update the invoice because you see this home and products, that's going to go away, and you see my 2 buttons down here. They don't exist yet. So we're going to do that. Next. Okay, but the moral of the story was, if we go to localhost, we go to products, we purchase something, right? We hit purchase. I go Sal at, dang it, UH.edu. I type in ASDF. I think that's the password. Click login. Right now, looks like I'm not sending anything other than invoice and valid. So we're gonna have to correct that in a little while, but we have work we have to do on this other stuff, okay? Okay. Moving on. That's not what I wanted to launch, okay. Okay. Let's go to the PowerPoint slide again real quick. I've got following the path from login to invoice, did that part, and now we're at the invoice. We're gonna have to modify the invoice HTML, right? What are we gonna have to do? We'll get rid of that nav bar thing. We're also gonna put two buttons in there, one to continue, this is what I'm calling them, continue shopping, and then purchase logout. Continue shopping, where do you think it's gonna send you? Back to products, where's purchase log, what's process, purchase logout going to do? Send you also back to products, but the difference being, I don't need to send any of the sticky data along with it. You're just going to go back. Now, in your page, you know how V had that like awesome, like whoa thing that came up on the screen? You need something. If you're going to do the whoa, make sure you properly annotate where you got that from. But there are similar things like that online that you could find. Okay, to say, hey, you completed it, and then it sends you back. What I currently have in my minimal program just sends you back. Okay, so when we're done with that, that's where you're going to get. Then on the Windows, on the invoice.js, we're going to ensure valid. That's no big deal. Populate your personalization message to the DOM. So what we don't have there now in the invoice HTML are my buttons. Got to get rid of that bar. And then also I need a field in my HTML to allow my welcome message to come to it. And then we will be able to test our personalization back on products after we hit continue shopping. Okay. So I'm going to show you my invoice.html. And I don't want to do that. Would you like me to? I am actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long ass boring video, but at least assuming Zoom actually records it. It was heartbreaking for me. I'm the one that had to redo it. It was more heartbreaking for me. Okay. So really nothing in the header matches, right? I mean, nothing in the header has, I'm sorry, the head needs to change, okay? Give me 1 second here. Damn it, I don't want to type all this stuff. I'm gonna have to type it. Okay. So you see where we are? I'm gonna get rid of this expanding navbar thing altogether. Why? Because in our current design, we don't want anyone to just go back. We want them to hit the two buttons that currently don't exist. Okay. Now in my header here, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of breaks. And I'm going to add a H5 ID equals same as the other one, hello message. And I'm going to go style. Style equals, excuse me. Color. And that's it. H5, and then I'll throw another break in here. So all I did there was, I did a bad job. I was supposed to move my invoice, my revised invoice over, so I didn't have to type all this junk.
Oh, oh.
Everyone's a critic. Just kidding. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so all I did right up on top was go ahead and create a place for the personalization, and you can do it wherever you want. Now, however, underneath the table, I need a couple of buttons. Okay, so I'm going to do a div. Okay. Oh my God, this is awful. This is going to take forever and a half. So I'm going to do a form. All right, let's just talk about what I'm doing real quick. Underneath my table, which is going to be populated through my invoice.js, which I'm not going to mess with, right? I'm creating a form. The form is going to have two things in it, two buttons. One button is going to be for continuing shopping. The other one's going to be for completing purchases. Okay. Okay, so in my form name, I'm going to do an input. It's going to be a class SM highlight type equals submit. Value, and you know what value is, right? It basically tells you what's on the button. Continue shopping. And do I need to name this? Yeah, let's go ahead and name it. Okay. I have a name. And then I have an on click. Now this is a little different than what we've done previously. We haven't had to do it this way, but I'm going to do an invoice. Fine. Invoice.action equals. And you'll see it will kind of make sense. Continue shopping. It's going to be what I called it. Okay. Okay, so I've got an input small button. Type is going to be a submit. The values continue shopping on it. When the name it continue, I have an on click on here, and on in my on click, my invoice action is going to be a go to that. Okay. Slightly different because we didn't have to do two buttons before. We're just doing one. We just did one before, so it was just a simple go ahead and action right up there on the form, but now we don't. Why do I keep getting errors? Okay. And then style. This is a V thing. She does everything prettier than I do, so I just copied it. But you are not supposed to copy. It's supposed to be original. Okay. And then okay. And I'm gonna cheat a little bit and copy and paste and change some stuff. Okay, we're gonna call this one. Complete purchase. I'm gonna call this one log out for the name. On click is going to be what I called it, I believe, is purchase log out. So that's the route name that I'm going to be using. And I should be good. Control S. And let me just make sure, see what it looks like. Oh, why did that happen? Because I didn't have valid. Right? Okay, that's okay. Fine. It's always nice when you get proven right without wanting to. Okay, so all I did here in my HTML was I added a little header spot for my personalization. You could put it wherever you want. Again, I put it in the most obvious, least attractive place possible because that's my style. And then down here, I added a couple of buttons, which you will see in a second once I actually go live on it. Then I want to look at invoice.js. So in my invoice.js, basically stays the same with one exception. And we did this previously on the, I did this previously on the purchase.html, the products.html on the Windows onload. But basically what I'm going to do is come over here. I'm going to else it. And I am going to document.get element by ID. Hello message, which you saw I just added, right? Inner HTML equals backtick. Thank you. Rams. And we also used a name. And now we will see, you see why it's useful because we just sent name, right? Okay. Name. I just made some stuff up, some words. And then we go, boom. Okay. So all I did different in my invoice.js. So all the stuff that's down here in invoice.js, all the usefulness that you had to create your table, still good. Okay. But I just added it to my Windows onload to throw in this hello message. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. My invoice.html is saved, and then go back to my terminal. That's interesting. Oh, I have an error. Okay. Oh, 8080 is already running. Interesting. How did I do that? How come you guys didn't tell me? Been finding every other error. I figured, you know, what the heck? Get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. There we go. Okay, now it's listening. Products. Purchase. Login. Okay, so got some things I got to fix, but we're getting closer, right? So I see we have an issue here. Thank you, no. That's not good. And then I got no for all these values. So somewhere along the line, I made a mistake with my with what I'm getting sent into the params, we can easily fix that, but bottom line is we have it here, and then let's make sure our buttons still exist, or our buttons do now exist. I got down there, complete, continue shopping and complete purchase. My buttons look prettier. I gotta fix that. I probably have something typed wrong. Okay. So let me go back and figure out what on earth I did wrong with my process login so that the information isn't working. Okay. Control C. Okay. Okay, so I got my request body, got my post, got my email, email address stuff. Yep, that's all required. So I got my let params down here. New URL center, temp user name and email. Okay, that's good. Sponsor redirect invoice, valid. Params.toString. That all looks good. So where's my, you know what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a console log right here. Just to see what's in it. Control S. Line 134. Oh, parentheses, sorry. Okay. Now, there we go. Actually, I want to make sure I start over with my new temp user data, make sure it all gets in there. Yes, ma'am. No, not yet. No. Log in. Now I want to look in my terminal. And you see where it says process login and then I get nothing? Right there. I should have temp user data. So why not is my question. Let temp user. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, that's there. So I got my let temp user come down here. To do temp user equals post. Let's go ahead and throw a console log in there also just to make sure it works. I'm just trying to troubleshoot what I did wrong here. Okay, so it has temp user data there. Okay. One thing that you found. How stupid am I? I have to put the brackets. Thank you, Chet. That's what I gotta do. Okay. Go back. Oh, I gotta hit the button. Okay. Let me check to see if it actually worked. Yep, there we go. Okay, so you see how now I end up having blank, 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 and then a couple of values because my temp user is properly populated. Okay, so now Chet is awesome until he isn't, by the way. Chet can lead you down the path of damnation if you allow Chet to do that. Okay. Does it? Damn it. Shit.
It says
Yeah. Here's the thing. Chet's gonna complain that we're doing it this way, but we're forced to do it this way by the assignment kind of thing. But what is Chet saying?
it's
Yeah, bring. Ah,
So change this to this.
let me see here. No, I mean, yeah, but I mean, I did it. So I mean, like I got it to work, but I might have made some mistakes in my typing because I'm looking at really small font when I actually wrote the code. So. Yeah, I forgot my curly braces. And then my temp user quantity, okay, that's added properly. So then what did I do? Store temp user, got it. So temp user worked fine through app post. And then when I got to the process login, temp user email equals entered email. Make sure I have the right name. So temp underscore user. I mean, that should work. I see no reason why. What does Chet say I'm supposed to do there in that if statement? Yeah, bring it up here again, because
So switch it that to that. Because it says. Should be done as an object.n.
um, it's annoying. Yeah. I mean, it really should work. Sorry, give me just 1 second, because I'm looking at my used to be functional or my currently functional program as opposed to the one I'm building from scratch. I'm trying to figure out what the heck went wrong here. Ah. Uh, All right, let me show you. Let me show you something. This is my this was my, I did it myself repo. And I have let temp user, which is what we have in my other one, A2 min. I'm going to show you where we are. So I got let temp user, right? Same. Okay. And I come down from my process login, got my post, get my entered email, did my logic, and this part right here, and that is working as you saw. I'm just going to go ahead and those things look exactly the damn same. So why isn't it working? Params, temp user, response, params.string. I mean, all of that is the same. Let me do a quick console log. Oh, I have an issue before that. I think my issue is right there on the going to the login page. That's where I think the issue is. So let me kill that server application. There we go. Go back to my, this is the one we were just writing. And make sure we get what we think we're supposed to get. And I think there is an issue. Products. Boom, boom. Hit purchase. And do you see the problem? But my URL is not getting what I'm supposed to out of there. So I have an issue in my products display that is screwing up my my process purchase. Sorry. So I've got my temp user. What did I do wrong in my temp user? Okay. Let params equal neuros temp user. Response redirect params.toString. So this is my process purchase. Okay, so this right here, you see this data being populated? This data right here is the temp user data. But my response redirect is not actually sending the URL data with it. So see what I did wrong. Created the error object. Oh, is that what I did? No, quantity has quantity. Yep. Error object. Boom, boom, boom. If that product error, that's fine. Else if has quantity, let I in product. Post quantity sub I. So that is working. So this line right here is working. This line right here is working. And then let params equals new URL temp user. Response.redirect. And that all looks right. Else if object keys length greater than 0, products HTML. So I'm wondering what on earth I'm doing wrong right here. Because this part right here should be giving, let's go ahead and console.log params. Down to my terminal, wrong one. That's interesting. My URL search params is incorrect. It should not be. New URL search params, temp user. Yeah, but even with that, it should work. Dot login, question mark, $sign. All right, I have no idea what the hell's going wrong. I'm going to go ahead and stop the Zoom for a moment.